Hello, this is the Lou from the Lou. Here's another story about how a player got played. Now, the story is told to me by a friend of mine. Let's just say we're going to call him Jake. Jake was the average dude, making about $40,000 a year. Decent house, decent car, but nothing to brag about. $40,000 a year, anywhere else, you'd probably be homeless. But Jake was the type of guy where it's that he loved having a good time. One of his passions was going to the pool hall. He loved playing pool. And one of the things he always wanted to do was break. But what he didn't realize was getting ready to break off on him. After he said, well, I only had 3 beers because he was getting ready to leave. Some of his friends said, well, might be a little too much. For most people that do drink, 3 beers, you're not feeling like you're drunk. And it has absolutely nothing to do with how you're feeling. It's the law. And the law is that if you didn't know, 2 beers, you considered legally drunk or intoxicated. So Jake got in his car, he started driving, he on his way home. Then he gets this phone call from one of his girlfriends that he had plenty of. He decided that when she said, baby, I am in the mood, he made the U-turn in the middle of the street and started going the other direction. Now on his way to her house, he had to go down this dark road. It was only a 2-sided street. There were no lamp posts. Your headlights weren't working. You almost couldn't see. And as he was turning the curve, another car was coming at him. He seen the headlights, but he could not get out the way fast enough. The car slammed into him. It totaled his car, and once he got out, he was able to go look at the other people. They were unresponsive. He called the police. They came, they called the ambulance. They also gave him a sobriety test, which he failed. I think he blew something like a 1.0. So, of course, they took him to jail. Once he got to jail, they arrested him, processed him and everything, and then they said, look, we're going to hold you here for a minute. Now, ordinarily, that would be considered a misdemeanor because this would be his first DWI. But once they found out that one of the people that was unresponsive actually died, and the other one slipped into a coma. So now what turned into a misdemeanor is now manslaughter. Time went on. He didn't have enough money to afford a really good lawyer. So he had to get a court-appointed lawyer. Well, anybody knows they're not going to do much good for you. Jake ended up getting sentenced to 4 years. Good behavior, he might be out in 2. Jake just lost everything. He lost his job, which in turn caused him to lose his apartment, which in turn caused him to lose his car. Now the insurance paid off the car, but they didn't replace it. So now Jake is sitting up in jail. They sent him off to the penitentiary. Now Jake has to deal with this. Jake's socializing. He's dealing with folks, doing whatever you have to do. Jake started realizing that after 6 months of being in there, all the girlfriends he had, well, they just all went away. He had a few people that would still come see him, like his mother, a sister, and maybe a cousin or 2. But they weren't sending him enough money for his commissaries. Now, Jake is just flat out broke. So he hooked up with another inmate, and he started a hustle where they started selling cigarettes. So him and this guy making money selling cigarettes. So now he has money to go get his commissary and whatever he needs to do. So it's not like he has to depend on anyone on the outside to help him do whatever he needs to have done while he's in prison. Well, one day they gave him a cellmate. He thought the cellmate was cool for a minute. Then one day Jake went to go get his stash. It was time for him to collect on get his cigarettes. So he got his cigarettes. He put them away where the guards couldn't find them because it's his own hiding spot. So one day Jake comes back home. I mean, not home, but to his cell, but that's home for anybody else. But he looks in his stash and he finds out that all his cigarettes are gone. And he said there's only one person who could have took them, and that was his cellmate. So he finds his cellmate, and he said, come in here, come in the cell, and let me talk to you for a minute. So the cellmate comes in, and he was like, man, where are my cigarettes? Cellmate said, well, man, I don't know what you're talking about. Jake looked at him. He said, I'm going to ask you one more time. Where are my cigarettes? Cellmate like, look, man, I don't know yet. Jake's like, look, I told you, do not lie to me. Where are my cigarettes? He's like, man, I don't know what you're talking about, Jake. Bam, bam. Then he's like, Lewis, please stop hitting me. All right, stop hitting me, okay? I took him. He said, man, my mother's having this operation. I needed the money. Jake said, look, let me tell you something, man. That's the same sad story everybody tells. He said, if you do not give me my cigarettes, I'm going to beat your ass right now, and I'm going to keep on beating you till I kill you. Dude said, look, okay. So as the guy was saying, all right, Jake, okay, he turned around, he came out with a weapon, tried to stab Jake. Jake moved out the way, pushed him, and he slipped, fell, hit his head on that bottom bunk, split his head wide open. Jake saw this. First thing he did was got rid of the weapon. He broke it up, flushed it down the toilet, then he called the guards. The guards came in, they seen this, they said, what happened? Jake said, man, he slipped. He didn't tell them they was fighting, because you don't tell the guards nothing while you're in prison. Well, at least you're not supposed to. So Jake, not thinking nothing else of it, about a week later, the guards come get Jake out of his cell and say, look, the warden wants to see you. He's like, what the warden wants to see me for? He said, well, you just got to go up there and see. So Jake goes talk to the warden. The warden said, hey, look. He said, your family, do you all have a good lawyer? He said, what you mean? He said, well, what I need a lawyer for? I'm already in prison. He said, well, you being charged with attempted murder. He's like, with attempted murder? What you talking about? He said, your cellmate said you tried to kill him. He said, try to kill him? What? He slept. He said, well, that's not what he told us. And Jake couldn't believe it. He said, man, that is the absolute number one rule. You don't snitch, and you definitely do not talk to the guards. Jake couldn't believe what he was hearing. He was like, wait a minute. He said, I tell you what, this is what you do. Get him, put me face to face with this dude, and I will prove to you that he slipped. He said, well, we can't do that right now because his last day was yesterday. He's a free man. But you will see him in court, and what a lot of people don't realize is that the same crimes you do on the street, if you do that same crime in prison, you got to go through the court system. And so now, Jake had his court date, and once again, the court-appointed lawyer, the jury found Jake guilty of attempted murder because the dude got on the stand and said Jake did all this to him. Now the judge gave him 20 years. Jake just went from 2 to 4. Now he has 20 years. Jake couldn't believe what was happening to him. So, and Jake told me, he said, man, they wasted no time sending me to a supermax prison. He said, I always thought penitentiary was the penitentiary. But I thought maybe I was like, man, I was on the level 1 or 2, They put me in the Supermax. He said everybody in there was doing at least 20 years. The other half was never getting out of there. He said the atmosphere was nothing beyond something I never experienced in my life. Jake said, well, I had to adjust. I had to have a few fights because if somebody takes something from you, and if you let them get away with it, they will continue. He said because half the people in that Supermax was doing life, they pretty much ran the joint. He said, as long as I wasn't running my mouth, wasn't really starting no whole lot of trouble, he said, I was pretty much okay. But he said the number one thing that would get you killed in one of them Supermax prisons is that you better not mess with nobody's boy. Well, Jake said, well, I ain't gay, so I ain't had no problem, have to worry about nothing like that. So Jake finally, as he started adjusting to being in the Supermax prison, he was able to run across some more inmates, and he got his cigarette hustle on again. So once he got his cigarette hustle on again, he started noticing that when he'd have his clothes washed, they would come back dingy, dirty, almost look like they wasn't washed at all. So what he'd done, what some of them would do, is that they would find somebody that works in the laundry. And if they have an opening, they will wash your clothes if you pay them on the side. So Jake found somebody that had an opening, but this guy just happened to be gay. So who cares? I mean, hey, he's gay, no big deal. So the guy said, okay, I got an opening. I can take you on, Jake. So Jake was paying the guy, and the dude was washing his clothes. So everything was pretty good for a little while. Then Jake was like ready to pay the guy, and the gay dude was like, no, don't worry about it. I got you on this one. And so Jake didn't really think twice about it because he was like, hey, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. But we all know too much of anything, it ain't something for nothing. Especially if you ain't getting something for nothing on the streets. You know how it's going to be in the penitentiary. So this went on for about a month. Then one day Jake went into his cell and the gay dude was sitting there. And Jake was like, man, what in the hell are you doing in my cell? And the gay dude expressed to him, he said, look, he said, I really like you, Jake. And I'm tired of my husband. He said, Jake, you're a really good guy. And Jake, I want to be your wife. I want you to be my husband. Jake was like, look, I'm not gay. I don't, even if I was, you belong to somebody else. I'm not going to have nothing to do with that. You know that would get another man killed quick. He was like, don't worry about him. I can take care of him. Just be my man, Jake. Jake like, look, let me tell you something. Man, wife, whatever. I'm not gay. I don't want you. Get the hell out of my cell. So the gay guy walks out with an attitude. And like they say, they don't snitch in prison, but a lot of times they do talk. And before Jake could even shut his door good, somebody had already told the gay guy, husband, let's just say his name Bob. It's almost like soon as the gay guy walked out the door, soon as he closed, here's somebody at his cell, and it's Bob, the gay guy's husband. He's like, man, what you doing messing around with my boy? Jake say, look, I'm telling you. He say, man, I'm not gay. I'm not having nothing to do with it. Well, Bob wasn't hearing it. Bob thinks Jake's lying to him. Bob say, I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to put an end to this right now. Because with those guys, you're in there for life. That's the closest thing he's going to get to a wife. And he told Jake, he said, this your last day on earth. Bob walked off. Jake, now he is just totally paranoid. I mean, he's like, man, what am I going to do? So that night, the cell door is locked And Jake said, man, I prayed to God because this dude, Bob, had a lot of folks behind him. He knew when Bob come, it wasn't just going to be him. It was going to be Bob and about 10 others. And he said, man, I got a few guys, but it's nothing that I don't have the clout or the muscle to deal with Bob. And he said, man, I laid in my cell that night and I just prayed to God. And my answers got heard. My answers got heard. The cell door opened and it was the guards. It was about 3 a.m. He said they came and got me. They said that the other person that was in the car woke up out of the coma and said they were both arguing. It was a man and a woman. And the woman was so pissed off and distraught that she just started driving crazy and ran into me. He came out the coma, told the story. That got me off the manslaughter. And the judge said because of the attempted murder, that the dude was an inmate and he always been suspect, that I should have never been in there in the first place. They immediately got me out of there. And the whole point of this is he said to me, he said, hey, Lulu, did you know that 3 beers got me 20 years? He said, no matter what else I do, one thing I will never do, I will never drink and drive again. Even though I know I'm not physically drunk off of 3 beers, but it's the law. And you cannot, under no circumstances, are you going to be able to beat the government and the police. And one thing I would like to say, please, whatever you do, don't drink and drive, because 1, 2, 3 beers could turn into 20 years. This is the Luke from the Lou. Please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching. Good night.